My name is Dr. Sue Stanton. Most people at Batchelor call me Dr. Sue, and I'm comfortable with that. I am a Kongarakan woman. This is my country. I'm traditional owner here. So I'll also say Kemek, which is a greeting from Kongarakan people. I'm a historian. In fact, I am a colonial historian. So I look at, in my studies, the factors and processes that drive colonialism, and I consider myself an expert at being a colonised person myself. I've always had that drive to actually put Aboriginal people back in the historical Australian landscape, and we're still trying to do that because they're very much missing from that landscape, and a lot of people are finding that very confronting, that Aboriginal people are starting now to demand that their histories be told, and that we be recognised for our contribution to the whole Australian history scene, and that it's an important part that's missing. So I'm dedicated to that. The role of the elder, academic and cultural leadership, involves academic disciplines and cultural engagement across our campuses, and also outside of that space as well, with the community in general, with other institutions. So it's a leadership role in that regard. The office of the academic and cultural leadership team comprises Narissa Bolsey, who is the coordinator of the cultural engagement training and development programs. And then our other elder is an elder in residence based at the Desert Peoples Centre, or the DPC, in Alice Springs. And that is Mr. Harold Ferber, who's an Arrernte man and a traditional owner for that area. My primary role is in the academic field, to oversee curriculum, the both ways, strengthening the both ways across research and any other academic engagement that Batchelor is involved in. And that's across both sectors, the higher ed and the further ed sectors. And then, of course, there's a cultural component to that, to ensure that the curriculum is appropriate and the correct language is being used, and the correct assessments. The actual formation of this role, the role of academic elder, was to have a leadership role in that research and higher degree research area, to advise and support our students, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in the first instance, but also any other students coming into the program, and that space for them to come and seek advice or guidance, or just a general place for open discussion. A culturally safe space, I think, is important in any institution, but especially in academic institutions. And I can only speak from past experience myself about not so much the unsafe place, but being a lone person in that space when you come from another culture, and trying to cope with the non-Aboriginal, in my case, the non-Aboriginal perspectives that influence the Western academic space. So I think for people from any other culture, but especially my concern is Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander students, and how they survive in that space, and how they grow in that space and learn in that space. Being in a culturally safe space, I think, gives more space for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander students to express themselves fully and to feel safe in doing that. The knowledge that students bring to that space is primary, and it should be valued. It can't be underestimated, the value of that knowledge that students bring at whatever level in education. The combination of the oral history tradition of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples is a really rich tradition that combines well with the Western approach, which is, you know, a more facts and figures and following certain milestones, I guess. And they're covered in the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander space as well, but more so through an oral tradition. But that doesn't mean they're less important or have less value. For me, knowing a lot about Western philosophy helped me a lot, but it also challenged me on a lot of levels, challenging my Aboriginal or my Kungarakan philosophies. So I think it's a really good journey to go on, and I'd like to see that happening more from the other side, the non-Aboriginal side, interacting and engaging more with the Indigenous knowledges and the Aboriginal knowledges. I think that would be really good if we can get a really good balance there. From my experience, I think the non-Aboriginal student needs to be a bit more flexible and accepting that there is another knowledge system or other knowledge systems. And until that happens, we can only assist them in having those conversations and not being afraid of other knowledge or knowledges. And that's how I see my role. I want to invite people to that space, to that Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander or Indigenous space, and say, we're not trying to force this on you, we just want to engage, we want to talk about it, and we want to compare notes and have those conversations. But I think the Western disciplines have been too inflexible in the past. So I see that there's ways of doing that by more communication and not being afraid of asking questions. I know as an Aboriginal scholar myself, I didn't ever think any question was silly or not important enough to ask. And even though at times I felt stupid asking those questions, it always opened up another dialogue. And I think that's really important. That's the way I see I can play a role in opening up those conversations. But it's also my role as a Kungarakan, because my major role is a peacemaker. So it's sort of like I fit into this space.